In this Python tutorial, you're going to learn about variables, which are one of the most fundamental concepts in programming. They're not specific to Python. They exist in pretty much every programming language out there. We use variables to temporarily store data in a computer's memory. Here's an example. Let's type price equals 10. When Python interpreter executes this code, it will allocate some memory, then it will store the number 10 in that memory, and finally it will attach this price label to that memory location. As a metaphor, imagine we have a box. In that box, we have number 10, and price is the label that we put on the box. Now we can use this label anywhere in our program to access the value that we have in that box. This is a very simplified explanation. So now let's print price on the terminal. Print. Now this time we're not going to add quotations, because if we put quotations here, we will see the text price on the terminal, not the value of the price variable. So delete quotations and type price. Now let's run this program one more time. There you go. So we see 10 on the terminal. So this is how we define variables. We start with an identifier, which is the name of our variable, then an equal sign, and finally a value. Now more accurately, when this number 10 is about to be stored in the memory, first it will get converted to its binary representation. So this number 10 that we have is in the decimal system, which has all the digits from 0 to 9. Computers don't understand all these digits. They only understand zeros and ones. So when we store the number 10 in the computer's memory, first it will get converted to its binary representation, which will be a bunch of zeros and ones, like 001, 001, whatever, I don't know. Then it will get stored in the computer's memory. So let's take this program to the next level. On the second line, we can update the value of this price variable. So we can reset it to a new value like 20. Now, when we run our program, we should see 20 because, as I told you before, Python interpreter executes our code line by line from the top. So first we set price to 10, then we reset it to 20, and finally we print it on the terminal. Let's run the program. There you go. So we see 20 here. Okay. Now these numbers that we have here are whole numbers without a decimal point. In programming, we refer to these numbers as integers. So an integer is a number without a decimal point. We can also use numbers with a decimal point. For example, here on line 2, we can define another variable called rating, and we set it to 4.9. Now in programming, we refer to this kind of number as a floating point number, or float for short. So we have integers and floats. We can also define a variable and set it to a string. For example, name equals Mosh. We also have another kind of value, which is called Boolean, which can be true or false. They are like yes and no in English. Here's an example. I'm going to define a variable is underline published. So we use an underscore to separate multiple words in our variable's name. We set this to true or false. These are the Boolean values. Now, note that Python is a case-sensitive language, which means it's sensitive to lowercase and uppercase characters. So when defining variables, we should always use lowercase letters. But here, false and true are special keywords in the language. So if we spell it with a lowercase f, Python doesn't understand it. You can see we have a red underline here, which indicates an error. So make sure to spell this with a capital F, or if you want to set this to true, make sure T is capital. So in this program, we are storing simple values in our computer's memory. Simple values can be numbers, which can be integers or floats, or they can be strings or booleans. But in Python, we can also store complex values like lists and objects, and that's what I'm going to show you in the future. So before going any further, I want you to do a little exercise. Imagine we're going to write a program for a hospital. So we check in a patient named John Smith. He's 20 years old and is a new patient. I want you to define 3 variables here for his name, his age, and another variable to tell if this is a new or an existing patient. So pause the video and spend 1 minute on this exercise. When you're done, come back, continue, see my solution. All right, so here we need 3 variables. The first one is the patient's name. We set that to John Smith. We can also call this full name. These are both valid names for our variables. The second variable is for the age of our patient. So age is 20. And finally, we need a variable to tell if this is a new or an existing patient. That's where we can use a Boolean value. So we define a variable is new and we set it to true.